You know, when certain foods were very difficult to swallow, and especially when Frank lost the use of his hands as well, therefore he couldn't even do it for himself. And you know, sort of looking at foods through different eyes, I suppose, because it's no longer a joy.
You lose your ability to feed yourself, and then you lose the choice of what you can eat because it's inappropriate. So it's just a constant loss all the time.
It was trial and error on what worked and what didn't work, and some days some things worked and another day it wouldn't work again.
Because I don't have anything that sets me back, I don't really can comprehend why this irritation does occur and what it's like when it does occur.
You've just got to be careful and use your head. You really do. It's no good thinking, oh, I'll hoe into this. You've got to think about what you're going to eat before you start.
There are three things we swallow: food, liquid and saliva. When we develop a swallowing problem, it can be frightening and bewildering. Suddenly, something that we've done automatically all our lives is out of control.
It makes me very careful. I choose what I eat. Otherwise I'd get into great difficulties because it's awful to get something caught halfway down, and that is something that I dread.
Whether you have a swallowing difficulty or whether you're looking after someone with this problem, either as family or as a healthcare professional, it's very important to understand the swallowing process. With this information, you can deal confidently on a day-to-day basis with the problems that will arise.
Because everybody's so different, and people give you advice and you try that, it doesn't work, so you listen to the next person. You just got to work it out for yourself, basically.
You can experience swallowing difficulties by popping a piece of marshmallow into your mouth and keeping your mouth open. It's very difficult to swallow with your mouth open. Then close your mouth and it's easy. You don't even think about it. But you've used another part of your mouth, the tongue. Now if you put another piece of marshmallow into your mouth and close the lips and try to swallow it without moving the tongue, it's very difficult as well, and it takes a long time actually to swallow. So if these parts of the body, the lips and the tongue, are not working strongly enough, swallowing becomes very hard work. Normal swallowing is fast and well coordinated. In 1 second, the food is controlled by the lips and tongue, parcelled up and ready to go safely into the throat and into the stomach. The whole process only takes 2 seconds, just 1 second in the mouth and 1 second in the throat. Lips, as we've seen, need to be closed. Jaws start chewing. The tongue tip goes up to behind the top teeth to create the barrier to keep the food in the mouth. Teeth. We chew and the tongue gathers the food together and pushes it up against the roof of the mouth into a sort of ball and prepares it for the second part of the swallow. Up to this point, we've been able to control the process. Once the food or drink reaches the back of the throat, the swallowing reflex is set off. This is involuntary and we can't control it. The soft part of the roof of the mouth rises to block off the opening into the back of the nose, and the voice box lifts, moves forward and shuts off the opening into the lungs. The muscles of the throat contract and squeeze the food through a valve into the food pipe. This valve is very important and it's all about timing. The valve opens in anticipation as the voice box closes. The food goes through the open valve into the food pipe and on into the stomach. So it's all beautifully easy and coordinated. But when a person has swallowing difficulties, the whole sequence breaks down. The dark bit is the food. The lips don't close, and as we've seen, this makes it very hard to swallow. If the tongue is not strong enough, there will be difficulties. The swallowing can be very slow, so eating will take a lot longer. was still watching the same teaspoonful trying to get down. When food or drink is left behind, this is called pooling. You can see thick mucus in the throat where some of this food has been caught. Normally the throat almost clears, but if the muscles are weak, pieces are left behind which can fall straight down into the lungs. The swallowing reflex is set off, the voice box rises and closes, but it all happens too late, which means that food or liquid can go down the wrong way. If it goes down the wrong way, then the reflex is to cough it back up. It depends how much control there is in the throat, how weak the muscles are, and how much food and liquid are being swallowed. Once we've seen where the problems are, we can work out the modifications. The fluoroscopy shows what's happening internally, but there are external things you can watch for. There may not always be any outward signs or symptoms, but if there are, you can watch for slow eating, obvious extra effort chewing, coughing while eating or drinking, or soon afterwards. The voice may sound muffled or wet after eating. Eating may be tiring. There may be frequent chest infections.
Frank's speech went very early too, so he couldn't actually tell them that that was wrong. He used his eyes a lot to communicate, and we had to sort of ask questions with yes, no, and we even had a blinking mechanism going, 1 for yes and 2 for no, and things like that. So it's very difficult for somebody who doesn't understand the disease and then doesn't understand the patient to actually find out exactly what the person likes. The time taken too, I mean, it was very exhausting. It took a lot of patience to sit and wait for him to get the message onto the screen and then speak it.
Yes, 3 buzzes per letter.
Yes.
Talk to a speech pathologist who has experience in this area. There are lots of reasons for swallowing difficulties. Ask questions and get answers.
You'd taken time to prepare something, you thought you'd got it right, and 1 spoonful and it's wrong. And yes, you can be tempted to just go plonk with the bowl over the head, but you don't.
No, you take it out to the kitchen.
You take it out to the kitchen, you calm yourself down and you try something else. And that's really all you can do, just keep trying different things until you do get it right.
The aim is to have attractive, nourishing food that is going to reduce any risk of aspiration. Aspiration is when food goes down the wrong way. It happens because the muscles can't deal with the type of food that we're eating. So if you make the food simple, then aspiration won't be a problem. There are crumbly foods that just simply don't fit into this category. Things like grilled meats are very hard to eat. The muscles have to work very hard, it takes a long time. It simply isn't worth the risk and it isn't worth the effort. It's something that is hard to leave behind, but it's important to leave it behind. Like flaky foods, like peas. We can all remember just the vision of how difficult it would be to control a pea. Celery that's stringy, the husks on corn, the flaky bits on bread. These are all things that are something that we've eaten all our lives, like the peanuts, but things that are just not ones that we can modify for this process. We modify food to make it safer and easier to eat. Weak muscles can't deal with difficult food. By mincing or even vitamising, we can make that food easier and safer.
To let him still have the choice of what he wanted to drink, what he wanted to eat, for instance. It's very easy just to plonk something down and say, okay, here's your meal. You have to let them maintain an input into their lives.
The whole aim is to give food that's appropriate. For vitamised food, you can use a vitamiser or a moolie or a sieve. These are nice and cheap, and they also produce the finest consistency. But the vitamised food can be difficult for the tongue to collect and may not produce enough stimulus to get the swallow going. So sometimes a coarser mixture is easier to control, so you can mash the food with a fork, chop it up, or use a food processor to get the right minced consistency. We swallow liquids and solids slightly differently, so combining them can create problems. This is what happens when you eat a soup like minestrone, for example. It has a mixed consistency of liquid, that is the stock, and solids, the veggies and the pasta. Taking tablets should be treated as a very risky mixed consistency. How often have we tried to swallow a tablet and the water's gone down but the tablet has remained stuck in the throat? It's easier to take tablets with a solid food rather than a drink. Tablets that can be crushed can be mixed in pureed fruit, custard or slipped into hard ice cream so they slip down easily. So this is cooking to try and make things easier. Using soft meats, making them into casseroles, using the dark meat from the chicken, anything that will help the food slip down more easily. And how do we maintain some pleasure in this food? Food might start off looking great, but once it's in the mouth, it's munched up anyway. So by vitamising or mincing, you're just doing what the mouth can no longer do. Present the dish as it is before it's pureed or minced. Smaller amounts look better than large messes, and they're easier to keep warm. Use the microwave or the oven, whatever you'd normally do. Puree food separately and serve it separately to retain as much taste and colour as possible. Look at this grey gunk. It's exactly the same food, dark chicken meat in a casserole, pumpkin and zucchini, but all slopped in together. With this one, each type of food was pureed separately. Which would you prefer to eat? So it's a trial and error approach. Food that people like and can handle will be much more successful. People will go to enormous lengths to try and keep eating food that's got pleasant memories and is good for them. But sometimes it really has to be a compromise.
Drinking in particular, he drank through a straw, obviously, but he couldn't drink with his head up at a normal angle. His head was right down. Looks and sounds quite odd, but it was the only way he could do it.
If a swallowing problem is ignored, it can lead to dehydration and constipation. So it's essential that people get enough fluid in the way that they can take it most easily. Drinks which are clear liquids need very fine control, so it's better to add a thickener or give thickened fluids. Thicker liquids will move more slowly. So use nectars rather than juices. You can puree fruit to add to juices or add commercial thickeners to drinks. Don't make it too thick so they have to use a knife and fork to drink it. In the beginning, white tea instead of black. Just that little addition of milk may be enough thickener. Sometimes aerated drinks like beer or soft drink or very cold drinks are good for people because the bubbles and the coldness stimulate the nerve endings and make it easier to swallow. For others, a warm drink is better. Just keep watching to see what they need. Keep asking for professional advice and keep remembering that every person and every set of problems is different. The person you're feeding may well be embarrassed or scared. Put yourself in their position. It's very difficult to feel dignified when you're dribbling.
Dribbling, although Frank had quite good control, especially early on in the disease. Towards the end, it became a problem, especially sleeping and just sitting, resting in the chair. And when he was tired, had a lot of difficulty keeping his mouth shut and holding it in and being able to swallow it. So therefore, it would dribble out, and that was embarrassing for him. People didn't understand.
The third thing we swallow is saliva. It doesn't get talked about much, but it's very important in swallowing. It helps to keep the food moist and helps it to slip down.
The saliva gets so thick and stringy, and certain foods and drinks, especially the milky stuff, tend to make that worse.
When saliva is thickened and ropey, it makes swallowing uncomfortable, hard to clear your throat, and increases breathing difficulties. The thick saliva tends to cling to the food, and this increases the risk of it going into the lungs. For some people, cutting down on dairy products will reduce the problem of too much thick saliva. You can substitute Vitari ice cream or skim milk for full cream milk, or use soy products. Using frozen grape juice and sucking papaya tablets before a meal will lessen the secretions. If thin saliva is a problem, medications can be taken to reduce this, but of course people's responses to medication vary widely.
I think it was because it was early on in the diagnosis, because Frank's hand's going first, it was Frank's vain attempt at holding on to his independence, so he tried quite a few things and then finally accepted the fact that if he was going to get a decent portion of a meal in, then he had to accept the fact that somebody else had to actually feed him.
Some people can feed themselves. Others will need carers to help them. In both cases, there are utensils available which will be helpful. Lightweight cups. Heavy cups are too difficult to manipulate. Insulated cups. Use clear or transparent cups so you can tell how much liquid you've given them. Ray Mullen cup with the side cut out. It allows you to get your nose in the cup so you don't have to tilt your head back, which creates a risk of pouring drink straight into your lungs. You can use a spouted cup. If you add a tube extension, use it with professional advice. It allows the fluid to get further back in the mouth if the tongue can't move it back itself. Straws should be wide and short. Use McDonald's, they're the best. Easier to suck up the liquid. Beware, for some people it's impossible because they can't produce any suction. The Pat Saunders straw has a valve at the bottom which keeps a bit of liquid in the straw. This straw can be heated and bent to the angle you want. Use heavy-duty plastic teaspoons. They're kinder on the teeth, and because they're shallow, they're easier to clear with a weak tongue. You can use angled spoons for left or right-handed people. Buy the correct one. And if you use non-slip mats, it gives the plate some stickability so it won't slip around.
The problem with feeding is just one big problem, isn't it?
When you're helping someone with feeding, you need to know exactly what their routine is, what they need, whether they need special knives and forks and spoons, whether they need to be in a special position. You need to have all the information before you start. Whether the person is in a chair or in bed, they need to be sitting upright. Most people being fed need to have their head forward a little. If their head is tilted back, it's more difficult for them to control the swallowing process. Collars make swallowing difficult, so you may need to remove the collar and support the head. With the shoulders and the back supported, you can use all your energy to swallow. And keep the food moist for easier swallowing. A small jug of gravy can help here. Helping someone eat is going to be a slow process, so don't rush them. Make sure one mouthful is swallowed before the next is offered. Watch for the swallow or some indication that the person is ready. Keep the swallows separate. For some people this doesn't work and they need to have a continuous swallowing style, so keep watching to see what's best for them. Generally give small mouthfuls each swallow, but not always. Some people need larger amounts to stimulate the swallow reflex. A distraction such as TV or music relaxes some people while they eat. For others, it doesn't work. See what suits. You as the carer shouldn't be distracted though. Don't look away while you're feeding. You need to pay attention to assess the person's needs. For example, some people find it okay to drink with meals, but other people have difficulties. It's not a good idea for a person with swallowing difficulties to eat and talk at the same time, so don't ask them a question if they've got food in their mouth. Wait until they're ready to reply. Although it's important to make sure people get nutritious food, also remember their energy needs are not very high, so don't overfeed the person you're caring for. When you're using so much energy eating, you should make sure that you're taking in as much nutrition as possible. So drinks such as Sustagen or Ensure are great supplements, either as drinks or as a substitute for a meal, or you can use them in cooking. When swallowing food is a problem, then keeping the mouth clean and fresh will also be a problem. Wipe the mouth with a swab with frozen grape juice, or water with lemon juice keeps the mouth nice and fresh. You can use this special toothpaste, which is low foaming, so gives you less to swallow.
They've got this horrible fear that that's going to be their end, whereas it's really, provided you're careful with the food and the drink, it's really not the fear it should be.
Yeah, it was, and it was frightening. And I'm not too sure who it's more frightening for, the the person who's got it or the person who's observing, but somehow or other you come out at the other end of it and you're still okay.
Coughing is rearranging stuff in the throat to make sure that it's swallowed. Normal coughing, strong muscles push the air up through the throat and get rid of anything that's in the way. We can assist weak muscles by helping to push the air out. Now for this to be helpful, you need to rehearse this with the person when there isn't a need to do it. It needs to be done cold. So what you do is you encourage the person to take slow, gentle breaths. So you take 3 gentle breaths, and on the 3rd breath I'll say 3 and I'll push at the side of your ribs here and just here. And when I push like that, you give a cough, and that'll help the air come up through. Right? You ready? So you take 1, 2, 3. Good. Again?
Again.
1, 2, 3. Terrific. So it's tough and it's ongoing. The pleasures of eating and drinking are replaced by the energy-sapping efforts of every mealtime, every day. So it's vital that we look at every way possible to make this process safer and more comfortable for you, the person with the swallowing difficulty, and for you, the carer, whether in the home or as a health professional.
And you just do it. It is part of the disease, part of the caring. It becomes a way of life.
We managed, we did it, and it worked.
I think it was a joint effort. This is not something you can do on your own.
I am now trying to be a detailed serving nurse, male nurse, but I'm not doing too well.
Oh no, I wouldn't agree with that. He does very well. Very, very well. First class. But I'm not hiring him out, I can assure you.